So I am indeed leading the Land for Life project. It's been an initiative that's been sort of in gestation under the Regional Council for a good sort of 6 or 8 years. Just acknowledge our partners, the Nature Conservancy, Google Lem, global conservation organisation that work with people and nature to provide solutions, and they've got street cred in international financing markets to bring capital in to solve environmental problems at scale. And also acknowledging MPI, whose governments sort of lead in supporting our work as well. So yes, it used to be called the Land for Life project, but it's bigger than just trees, and I'll describe a little bit of that as we go through. So there were a number of drivers for that change. So it's now Land for Life. Hey, well, if there was ever a weather event like Cyclone Gabriel to change the conversation that soil erosion is a hill country farmers issue alongside a water quality issue into an issue that is actually a community issue, blowing out infrastructure, billions of dollars worth of damage, taking up productive farm and horticulture land along with the capital investment on that land, and ending up in our living rooms and killing people. So, if there was ever a need for a project like we envisage this one to be, it's now. The Regional Council's journey, as I said, did start 6 or 8 years ago, growing evidence that sediment in waterways was the major stressor, less so nutrients like in other regions. Significant areas of Hawke's Bay we don't rate very well nationally, of land, sort of bare land in very high erosion zones with 5 million tonnes of sediment entering our waterways every year. That's on an average year, not like the one we've just had. So if putting trees on vulnerable land makes sense to help reduce soil erosion, why isn't more of it happening? It's because it's hard work and the models are sort of broken, and Mike Pedersen talked to some of these points during his conversation earlier today. There's not very well-established financing mechanisms out there. Sustainable green financing is becoming more prevalent, which is great. Pushback on regulation that's ramming into the primary sector that we all know well enough, so I won't go on about that. Lack of confidence, lack of knowledge around interventions, for example, tree species and which places and management regimes. Generally, there's a will to do this by landowners, but this lack of knowledge and confidence. A lack of access to resources, and in our survey this came through as money and time. And often a farmer would say, we do intend to fence that remnant bit of native bush, and it's on our priority list, but it just never quite gets to the top because our money's better off putting somewhere else, business as usual activity. Misguided carbon markets, uncertainty around the ETS, and lack of technology. So with all of that, there's an urgent need, we believe, to see what models can be developed to implement the large-scale change that we do need. So what is Land for Life? It's a public-private partnership bringing capital, tools, expertise alongside the landowner's vision to implement change on farm. It consists of two components mainly. The main component is afforestation on vulnerable land, and that includes fencing remnant bushes I mentioned, looking after wetlands and so forth. And the other component is regenerative agriculture principles. If you're taking 15 or 20% of land out of pasture-based production and putting it into trees and other interventions, then there's a great opportunity to look at your whole farming system. So it's an integrated farm planning concept, again turning the farmers or the landowner's aspiration with expert knowledge into a plan. And it's more than just a freshwater farm plan. It incorporates sort of putting the right trees in the right places, incorporates biodiversity improvements, greenhouse gas emissions, and importantly, the costs and the revenues associated with those interventions that can then be used as a business case to talk financing of those interventions. Yeah. Where are we at? We've worked with 12 very, very generous landowners to develop farm plans on their farms, and there's unfinished business with those landowners. We learnt a lot during that process. We've developed the model and worked out how we believe we can scale this to 600 farms in quick time. We've put together a business case with support of our partners that describes the model, how we would implement that scaling and the associated costs and the benefits, and that business case is being assessed at the moment. In terms of benefits from scaling to 600 farms, we're modelling 25% reduction in soil erosion, 15 million tonnes of carbon sequestered over 30 years, 1,400 hectares of wetlands under protection, about 100,000 hectares of land protected through afforestation, a whole lot of reduction in leakage of nitrogen. So really quite compelling outcomes. What does this take? A collective effort that revolves around the landowner and catchment groups, bringing together current regional council activity, government activity, financing mechanisms, and financing partners and implementation partners. So that's all described in the business case. What does that look like? Nearly $100 million worth of interventions on farmland, and that's where the public-private partnership comes together. During our work, we think that's on the conservative end. Our pilot farmers were often presented with a couple of options. One was sort of the more generous approach to planting and intervention on farms, and one was the more conservative approach. And generally they took the more conservative approach, which is understandable. And we're okay with that because we see that being a stepping stone on a journey that is 10 years or 50 years long towards the more generous approach as revenue streams are proven, confidence is developed and knowledge is developed in the landowner community. What will that cost? Over 10 years, 35 million through input from landowners, through input from regional councils and from government. And it sounds like a big number, but at 3.5 million a year, when you think of the money that's going in by all of those parties currently, it's actually not that big a number when you slice and dice that. So back to where I started in just this last slide, if there was a time to consider trying to provide the outcomes that we want for future land use resilience at scale and to do it quickly to solve the sheer impacts that extreme weather events can provide, it's now. The parties sort of recognise this as a key tool to provide that long-term resilience out in our hill country farmlands and in our communities. But there's very real headwinds, as in regional councils and governments and farmers. Finances are really stretched at the moment. So we're working with all of those parties right now to try and find innovative ways to actually move this forward. So really exciting time, and watch this space. Cheers.